Hello, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is Force with some more ArcheAge. In today's video, I'm going to take you through a dungeon run. This is the first, I guess, official dungeon. I don't even know if it's officially called a dungeon. I just know I had a elite quest for this area that required a group. This is called the Palace Cellar. It's in one of the main towns that you go to around level, I believe, 15 to 20. And the group size in this game is 3. So you're obviously going to be led to believe that you should be running a tank, a healer, and a DPS. And that's probably the most optimal thing. Given that this is a low-level dungeon, though, we actually didn't end up doing that. Number one, it's hard to find people. Number two, low-level dungeons in most games, MMOs, can be suboptimal in terms of group composition. So we're running with 2 DPS. There's myself, a mage character, like a ranged magical caster, and then we've got our tank, who is, I believe, running Battle Rage, Protection, and then whatever the healing skill line is. I forget the name of it at the moment, but his class name, I think, was a Paladin. That's what he's classified as. And you'll notice the buffs, actually, for all 3 of us. The mage is wearing cloth. He's got the cloth set buff. I've got the leather set buff. And the tank's got the plate set buff, which was really great for us because when those are the 3 types of armor in this game. And so that when it dropped in this run, there was no question as to who rolled for what, which was nice. So I'm just going to take you through this dungeon. I'm going to just talk with you about my experience. Again, I'm playing basically a range archer character. A few things you'll notice. Sometimes you'll just see me standing still when you feel like I should be moving. I actually have a buff that increases my damage if I stand still. If I move, it will actually drop the buff. This is something I really find neat about this game. Instead of healing food, we've got songs, and you basically get instruments, which is a gear piece, which will determine if when you play the song, if you'll be replenishing your health or if you'll be replenishing mana. And it's an AoE thing, so you notice we all are standing there. It stacks the buff on top of each other, which is really neat. So yeah, there's an item. It wasn't my armor type, so I decided to pass it. I feel like that's probably going to be the best thing to do when you're going into dungeons, is to make sure you've got one heavy, one medium, and one light, so that there's no squabbling over the loot, essentially. And basically, if you wear a full set of one type of armor, it gives you a buff, and my particular buffs are really good for range damage and crit. The heavy buffs are good for tankiness, and the light buffs are good for magicka. So it really incentivizes, just focusing on one gear type, because the more of the gear type you get the full set, and you get some really nice extra bonuses the more pieces that you have. So far, just clearing a couple of trash mobs. Something I really liked about this dungeon, once again, this is called the Palace Cellar. I just like the general vibe and the tone of it. It feels very Dark Souls to me, which is hilarious because I'm playing Dark Souls right now, but it's very dark and dreary. That guy floating up in the air, the caster in our group has this crowd control spell. Think something similar to a sapper, polymorph if you're familiar with World of Warcraft, but it basically incapacitates an enemy for a fight until they take damage. So yeah, just a couple of trash mobs. Again, I'll be standing still here a lot of the time. My F1 ability, which is located at the top center there of my second hotbar, right there to the center right. It gives me a short duration buff. I think it lasts like 10 seconds. It dramatically increases the duration. It dramatically increases my range damage. So for this particular area, there's fire in the way. How do you get rid of the fire? Well, with water, of course. Unfortunately, our tank wasn't aware of that. I'm busy trying to douse the water. He's busy running through the fire and burning and thinking, what the hell just happened? Right after this pull, I told him, oh yeah, we're supposed to douse that with water. And then he's like, oh, okay, LOL, that's kind of funny. I had a great time with this group. It was really fun. They were all, both these people were really chill, and we just enjoyed this run. This was actually my second run through. The first time I tried running the Palace Cellar, I was level like 17 or 18, and I tried it with 3 DPS. Again, not really knowing that this was like officially a dungeon. We got elite quests that told us to go here, so I just assumed, okay, these are more difficult mobs, and I'm gonna need a group to go through with this. So I looked for a group, we got 3 DPS, and then once we started coming across the bosses, we were like, oh wait, this is a straight up dungeon, isn't it? Like just a regular PvE dungeon. And with the 3 DPS group, I was actually able to clear the first few bosses. The last boss, though, gave us way too much trouble. We just needed healing that we didn't have. And even with this group, even though we don't have a dedicated healer, because our tank is a paladin class, we were able to do it, which you'll see later in this video. So here we go, this is the first boss, not too difficult. Let me talk about the mechanics. He'll basically randomly put those 2 those sparks on 2 of your group members, and you just have to move. If you stay there, you're gonna take damage, and then they explode, you take more damage, and actually one of our group members just died there, and you'll notice he respawned, so... We lost a group member, unfortunately, alas, but we're going to end up taking this out. She also lobs out these fireballs. These can be dodged. I'm standing still because I have my buff and I'm trying to increase my damage, thinking that I can tank a little bit. And you can see, again, those 2 sparks placed down. We just move out of the way, no problem. Those little fireballs that she lobs, there are a variety of mage-type NPCs in this game that do that. It was nothing specific to the boss. The boss did drop some great leather pants. Unfortunately, it's the same pants that I got in my prior run, so that makes me sad. Yeah, man, look at this. Look at the door and the torches. Very Dark Souls feeling to this. Very dark and dreary dungeons. I really like the tone set here. The story of this area is told through these little sort of mini scenes where you'll be blocked off. Notice that little barrier there. You'll be blocked off from progressing, and then you'll see some dialogue of the NPCs beyond there. To be frank, though, I did not pay attention to the story in the least bit. This game doesn't have voice acting. There is NPC chatter. Unfortunately, it's all in Korean. I don't understand that. Oh, look at what you just saw there. One thing I did want to mention. This game does have collision detection, also with friendly players. Bad because of griefing, good and funny because of griefing. So there are those 2 things. Here's this, what appears to be a mini boss. The first dungeon run that I did this, we ended up getting loot off of it. Although it didn't end up happening in this run, I'm not entirely sure why, but he's not a real boss. He's actually just outside the next boss fight, which we're about to see in 1 second. But yeah, I guess at one point, I think he actually dropped like a legendary piece or whatever. All right, so here's some AoE healing, and remember they do stack. Myself and the mage character, we both had the health one. And then our tank has the mana regeneration one, probably because the tank has self-healing, so it makes the most sense. This boss was very, very tough when I did 3 DPS. Wasn't that big of a deal. I took it slow at the start. You'll notice that I was just lobbing a couple of arrows. I wasn't using a lot of abilities because I have very high DPS, damage per second, if you're not familiar with MMO terminology. I have very high DPS, and it's very easy for me to pull aggro, and as of this point, I have no aggro dropping abilities. So essentially, when I do these things, I just try to make sure I chill on the damage early on. I let the tank get aggro. There is threat generation. There is taunts and stuff like that in this game. And even though it's the mixy-matchy class system, it definitely appears to be the case that we can fill those standard roles, a dedicated tank, a dedicated healer, even if one of their skill trees is something other. Yeah, so the tank has taunts, threat generation, everything like that, but the taunt, he told me that he only has 1 taunt, so and it was on a long cooldown, so because of that I decided to chill out, and you notice I did pull aggro a couple times in that fight. This was a hilarious moment. We're running up the stairs, so we just killed the last boss. We go into this room, we open the door, we're running up the stairs, and this giant flaming boulder comes down upon our heads. Again, you think maybe it's just an Eastern development thing, but there's so many tones of like Dark Souls that I get from this game. That just reminds me so much of the original Dark Souls, where you go up the stairs and there's a boulder just falls right on your head. Now, admittedly, that boulder was going pretty damn slow. So it wasn't that hard to avoid, but it was really funny, especially if you're not paying attention and you're just running up in your first run. My very first run through this, we almost got obliterated by that. We were just a hair away from it, so it's kind of funny. All right, so here we go. We're coming up on the last boss fight now. The actual dungeon run, the full time, I think it took us around 40 minutes total. 20 of those minutes were just figuring out the last boss fight's mechanics. We wiped a bunch of times. It's pretty straightforward. There's really only 2 big things to pay attention to, at least from what I noticed as DPS, and we're gonna go over that here. There's a little mini cutscene. Here's a character spinning around the staff drop. I love that robe, by the way. That is a badass looking robe. So after a handful of wipes, and also waiting because there is this debuff thing when you die a bunch of times in the dungeon. So there's 2 mechanics. Number 1, he self-buffs, which puts a flame on him, and it makes him like a beast. So you need to douse that with those nullifying buckets that we saw there. But then he also does that AoE attack, which sets everyone on fire, and you just need to immediately run to the water. Actually had a couple runs where the tank wasn't catching on and just kept dying to the fire. We're like, go to the water, go to the water. We finally got it through, and it ended up working out. And then beyond that, it's just sort of a tank and spank. You know, again, be careful pulling aggro. We had the mage pull aggro there, although it was kind of nice because we were just bouncing aggro back and forth, and since our tank is like a paladin type character that can heal, look at that blink, look at that clutch blink, he was able to, when we pulled aggro, heal us up if we got hit a couple of times. And the boss was actually fairly easy to cut around until she goes in berserker mode. So that's going to happen again here in 1 second. You're going to notice there'll be a self buff on her, and then she gets this little flame icon. Something I really missed in ESO were debuff and buff icons and information. That's something that really bummed me out. So here it is, there it is, the little flame buff icon on herself. So immediately I see that, we go back here, we grab the nullifying potion, we drop it on her, she doesn't have that, and then she's also right now casting her AoE damage. It's going to set us all on fire. Run in the water, douse out the fire, or else you'll die from the damage over time from that. And then we just finished DPSing her down. And that is pretty much it. And I guess that's going to do it, guys. Just a quick look at a dungeon run, the Palace Cellar here in ArcheAge. I really had a lot of fun. I really did. Again, I did 2 runs of this. The first one didn't go so hot. We did make it all the way to this last boss, but we didn't end up taking... Oh, gosh. How I would have loved... I just love seeing epics. That's all I'm saying. I love seeing epics, but that wasn't an epic for me. I love the tone of the dungeon, just the environment. The word keeps coming up, but Dark Souls, Dark Souls, Dark Souls. I just feel it so much, not in the gameplay, of course, itself, but in the tone of some of the areas of this game, this particular dungeon, to be exact. It's good fun though. You know, they've got a good loot system where you're gonna roll basically need or pass for any items, and then there'll be a random roll. So it's nice to see that in this game. I think that's an important mechanic. And you know, some interesting boss fights. Once again, the last boss took us some time to definitely nail down the mechanics. We saw the nullifying potion. We saw that we were set on fire. You know, it seems so simple looking back on it, but initially when we jumped in, we're like, okay, wait a second. Do we douse the potion on do we douse the nullifying stuff on ourselves when we're on fire? Because you die very quickly. The dot's only on you for a few seconds before it takes away your health completely. So there is that. All right, guys, that's going to do it. Thank you so much for watching this run of the Palace Cellar. Continuing to enjoy ArcheAge. I'm going to play it some more. I'll give you guys some more coverage, talk about there's a lot to talk about with this game, so you know, there's probably going to be some more videos as long as I keep chugging away. All right, thanks so much. Hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Keep watching and keep owning.